What's good, YouTube? What's good, y'all? I'm back with another video, and this is a video where I'm showing y'all the best build, and this is the best guide for Raiden Shogun. It's a new updated guide. It's gonna be the best one you can find on YouTube, but I'm gonna try to make this the best for y'all and try to condense it, give y'all exactly what you need to know. No extra, no less. Just as much as you need to make sure you have your Raiden at her peak capabilities. Any way you want to be able to build her, you can build her in this video. I'm gonna show you how to do it. So let's move on and start the video. So I wanted to go ahead and start off with her talents and then give you all information on how you actually use her. And if you want to use her in different ways, you can. So just to start it off, her first talent is obviously just her normal attack. Her normal attack actually isn't as important because she's gonna not be dealing as much damage just through her normal attack because she's not a physical damage character. You can build her a physical damage, and if she's a hyper character or your hyper carry, you're gonna want to use her and you're gonna want to level all her talents because she's gonna be dealing the most damage and she's gonna be on the field the most for your team. So I do recommend, if you're running her as a hyper carry, to level up her first talent. If you're gonna run her as a support, I recommend leveling up this talent right here, her second talent, Transcendence Baleful Omen. I recommend leveling that up. Baleful Omen is a very, very good talent. It's one of the best talents in the game, in my opinion. It gives her the ability to increase her elemental burst damage and her teammates. When you use their elemental burst and you get orbs or elemental orbs, that increases her damage and her team's damage, and it makes it to where you're able to just do increasing amounts of damage from that, and that alone increases her value by so much for her party and for herself. But the reason why another reason why this is so good is because it generates so many electro particles or particles in general that you're going to be able to generate and be a battery for your entire team, if not just herself. So that talent right there is amazing in my opinion. Now, moving on to her third talent, her Elemental Burst. Her Elemental Burst is very, very strong. When she's in her Elemental Burst, she actually has super armor, allowing her to not get interrupted at all. It's absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. It's so cool. It's very, very good. She's immune to electro reaction damage. It's very, very strong. She deals massive amounts of damage. In the beginning of her burst, it's actually a huge high damage single shot that she deals massive amounts of damage with, especially when you build it up with her Transcendence Baleful Omen, which is the chakras that she gets from the elemental burst and energy orbs that you get from just, generating with that elemental skill. It's very, very, very good. Next, we have her fourth talent, which is Wishes Unnumbered. This is a chakra Dorata that I was talking about. She gains 2 resolve, and it's very, very strong. It can only occur every 3 seconds, you can see on screen. But when she gets those elemental orbs or particles, and then she gets the they do their burst. I think she gets that from Enlightened one, if I'm not mistaken. But it's very, very strong because it just increases her support capability and her damage for herself. It's very, very strong. Everything in her kit is very well made. I think she's one of the most complete characters in the entire game. And this is her fifth talent, Enlightened one. This is for Musho Ishin. It gives her electro damage bonus, and it's very, very, very good. 1% of above 100% energy recharge gives you so much value. This is why you build her for energy recharge, and we'll go over that when we go over her artifacts. This talent is very, very strong, and it makes her very good, and you don't even have to run an electro damage goblet depending on what your substats are, but we'll go over that, like I said, in the artifact section. And this is her sixth talent, her passive talent. She just makes it the way you spend less more, 50% less more when ascending swords and polearms. It's actually really, really nice to have. It's just a great quality of life thing that you can use whenever you're ascending swords and polearms, which I'll be using when I'm leveling up Ayato's sword, and you'll be using it if you're getting the engulfing lightning or anything for her. Now, moving on to her weapons. As you can see, her number one weapon is obviously going to be the engulfing lightning. Engulfing lightning is very, very, very strong, man. It's just her strongest weapon. It gives her so much. It gives her energy recharge. It gives her a 10% over energy recharge, which she has over 100%. And then it gives her even more energy recharge after you actually use your elemental burst. As we know, it's obviously going to be her best weapon, but you can see I have the catch. The catch is also very, very, very strong. It's a free-to-play option you can use because you can go and just catch fish and get the weapon. And as you can see on screen now, the Staff of Homa. Staff of Homa is probably one of the strongest weapons in the game, if not the strongest. It's just going to be great on her just because of its pure stats alone. It's just going to be incredible. She doesn't get too much from the actual passive of the weapon, but it's still a strong option on her. There's other weapons you can use on her, but those are the top 3 weapons I recommend. If you have weapons that give crit damage or crit rate, like the Deathmatch or the Black Cliff Pole, those weapons can be very, very strong on her as well, but I personally recommend the first 3 weapons that I showed you. And again, moving on to the Constellations, man. The Constellations are very, very good on Raiden. They're very strong, but as you can see, I don't own any. I actually do recommend getting up to Constellation 2, but we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But the first Constellation, as you can see, it just increases the amount of resolve that she gains from her Chakra Desiderata, which will make her deal more damage for elemental burst. It just increases the amount that you get, especially from electro characters. And other characters of other elemental types only get a 20% increase, but electro characters get 80%. It's very strong. It actually helps her get her burst quicker and make it stronger faster, and it gives you way more utility. And it's pretty strong as a first constellation, but I don't rank it above some of the other first constellations in the game. Now, moving on to her C2, which is, in my opinion, it's her best constellation. It gives you the most value. It's giving you, pretty much it's going to give you 60% extra damage on her elemental burst because it reduces the enemy's, or it ignores the enemy's defense, or 6% of the enemy's defense while using her elemental burst. It is absolutely ridiculous. This turns Raiden from a good carry and a strong main DPS to a hyper carry and a very ridiculous shredding everything in the game type of DPS. You can shred any content in the game with C2 Raiden. My friend actually owns C2 Raiden, which is why I've seen so much of her, and it's very, very, very strong. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm actually not going to go over Constellation 3 and Constellation 5 because it's just a increase to her talents. It just increases them by 3. This is the same for every character in the game, and there's no reason for me to go over these in particular. And her 4th talent actually gives her a massive support ability, similar to Noblesse Obliged, or actually even stronger than that, I think, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm mistaken, you just let me know in the comment section, but I'm pretty sure it's just pretty similar. It gives her 30%, or her allies or party members 30% bonus attack for 10 seconds. Is very, very, very strong after using Musho Ishin, which you're going to swap after that more than likely anyways. But if you have her Constellation 2, this is pretty unnecessary because the enemies are more than likely going to be dead anyway, so you're not going to need the extra 30% attack. But if you do, it's here. And just like her Constellation 4, this is a increase to her support ability. You're going to be able to decrease the elemental burst cooldown of your party members when you're doing attacks in Musho Ishin. But like I said, from Constellation 4, you're more than likely not even going to need this because if you have Constellation 2, all the enemies are going to be dead. So for my recommendations for the Constellations, if you are going to go for Constellations, which I do recommend, stop at Constellation 2. And if you get anything after that, Constellation 3 is going to be kind of nice because it's going to buff damage of her elemental burst, but anything after that is really going to be diminishing returns if you're using her as a hyper carry. If you're using her as a support, then I guess you could go for it, but I personally do not recommend that. So moving on to her artifacts. This is what everybody wants to see. I know y'all want to see the artifacts and what I recommend for y'all to use on your artifacts, so let's get into it. Of course, the only thing you're going to be wanting to use is the emblem set. The emblem set is very, very, very strong, and it's almost, I think, is personally made for Raiden Shogun, but it's very good on other characters too. So you're going to be able to actually be able to run the artifact domain because there's so many characters in the game that actually need emblem, so I highly recommend emblem, and it's the only set I'm going to recommend. Do not use any other set on Raiden Shogun. It gives you 20% energy recharge, which is very, very great, and it gives you 25% damage on elemental, or 25% of your energy recharge is damage on your elemental burst. Very, very, very strong. Up to 75% though. what you're gonna want to use on your sands. I know that's very, very controversial, I guess I'd say. Energy recharge is gonna be the best thing you can use. Attack percent is second, but whichever one you get that has the best substats, run that. The substats are very, very, very important on Raiden Shogun. Substats you're gonna want to use is gonna want to use crit damage, crit rate, energy recharge, and attack percent in that order. As you can see, we're moving on to the goblet. The goblet is going to be attack percent, and the same thing for the goblet. You're gonna want to use the same substats, but you can use an electro damage goblet if it has better substats. It's very, very reliant on the substats because Raiden Shogun is so reliant on her substats. So depending on what you have is what you're going to be wanting to use. And for the circlet, you're going to want to either have crit damage or crit rate depending on the weapon that you're using. If you're using an energy recharge weapon, you're probably going to have to run crit rate to supplement the lack of crit damage from your weapon or crit rate from your weapon. I use crit rate, as you can see, because I needed it. I may or may not be switching to crit damage soon though, depending on the weapon that I use on there, depending on how my summons go for Ayato. But I do highly recommend crit rate or crit damage. There's nothing else that you really would want to run. Attack percent was actually going to just be a massive decrease in your actual damage output, so I don't recommend that at all. And you know, substats, like I said, the substats are very, very useful on her, so try to get the best substats you can. If you can see from my artifacts, I've been very unlucky with the Emblem Domain. These are the best artifacts I've gotten from it, but I will. So in this video, I'm not going to be recommending any Dendro characters because I already made a separate video about if you want to run Raiden as a Dendro as with other Dendro characters. I made a whole separate video about that. You guys have to run her completely differently than I'm showing you in this video, but I think this is the best way to run her. But if you do want to run her with other Dendro characters, I need you to check out that video. I'll leave the video in the description, and it's a similar video to this, going over everything that you need for that type of build. So the first character I'm going to highly recommend for Raiden Shogun is going to be C6 Kujosara, or Kujosara in general, or another electro support if you do have one. But Kujosara is very, very strong with her. Kujosara is very, very strong. Fischl is very, very strong because of her. She's going to give you way more energy particles and everything like that. She's going to be able to just do massive amounts of damage as well, and just help you do even more damage with Raiden. Another character I would highly recommend is going to be an animal character, such as Kazuha. Kazuha is very, very good in increasing Raiden Shogun's personal damage, and Swirling Electro, which decreases the enemy's resistance if you're using Redistant Veteran. It's very, very, very strong. And Bennett, I highly recommend Bennett as well. Bennett is going to be able to make your team and your character do way more damage, just increasing her attack percent and her attack by a very high margin, especially if you're going to use him with no bless. She's just going to be able to do massive amounts of damage with Raiden Shogun and be able to hyper kill your entire team. Some other characters I would recommend, but not as highly. Mona's very good at buffing the team as well and buffing Raiden Shogun's damage. She's going to be able to do a massive amounts of damage with her burst. And then I would say Jean would be nice because she's a nice animal character similar to Kazuha, and she's a good healer, so she will help the team very well as well. If you made it this far into the video, comment down below. Raiden Shogun is the best. But if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, and I'm out.